Welcome to Hoop Talks, your spot for everything NBA, the Toronto Raptors, and Team Canada. I'm Noor Zainab, today joined by the host of Behind the Play podcast, Alex Adams, who covers the senior men's national basketball team through Raptors Republic. Alex, thanks so much for being here today. I know your schedule's all over the place. You were just in Indonesia, the Philippines, covering the Raptors, covering Team Canada, and being one of the only Canadians really there, right? So what was your experience like working so closely with that team?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Shout out to Rash Madani who guided me along the way. It was just me and him in Jakarta, so that was pretty cool. I got to know Rash very well after like 2 weeks in Jakarta, so that was fun. But no, it was really cool. The team obviously made the Olympics on the last day I was there, which was really cool. Obviously beating Spain. A lot of people would remember that, but then Dylan Brooks put up 40 points against almost 40 points against the USA. So really cool getting to know a bit of a couple of the players. Obviously, Jordi Fernandez, the CEO Mike Bartlett, and Rowan Baird a little bit. So just overall, really cool experience, and it was pretty nice to see them make the Olympics and obviously beat the USA in Manila. That was a pretty great way to cap off the tournament for the Canadian team.
Yeah, I don't know which one I liked more, the Olympics or beating the USA to get that bronze. Either or, I'm like at a pretty good scale there. But you're right, making the Olympics was the milestone, and I'm glad that we hit that. Obviously, you wanted the gold, but for Team Canada, just making, to the Olympics meant a lot to them. And I feel like there's a buzz going around the city, around the country, that's only going to keep growing once next summer comes around. So, as we know, you were there in the nitty gritty of it all. You're taking in the sweat of these players. So, what are you taking away from this experience, and what do you think that we'll have to look forward to when Team Canada goes on to the Paris 2024 Olympics?
Well, I think they really grew together as a team. They got so much continuity and they've learned how to play the FIBA game, which for some people that don't know is quite different from the NBA. It's much more physical. There's no defensive 3 seconds. The 3 point line's closer. Maybe that's why Dylan Brooks went off. But yeah, I think just they learned how to be in all these tough games, the way they came back and beat the Spanish, the way how they handled that Mikal Bridges terrible, crazy ending to regulation. But then they found a way to push through, and I think those are some of the things that going into the Olympics that they really will feel maybe more comfortable, more together, and that might really help them. I dare I say maybe even win a gold medal or at least win a medal at the Olympics, because I think that's really the next step. And I really believe that that's something that I know they themselves expect to win the gold medal. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen, but they expect to do really big things at the Olympics. And why shouldn't they? Canada has Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Dylan Brooks, RJ Barrett. If you add a Jamal Murray, and Andrew Wiggins, that's even a bit scarier. This team's going to be in a really good spot, and I really hope, as you said, that they capture the nation's attention. I think beating the USA really did that, and now a lot of guys in the NBA can go back and say that we're Canada's better than the USA at men's basketball. So that's pretty cool too.
Like I said, that was the best part of it for me personally. But as you mentioned, and at the FIBA World Cup, I think for us, we knew that the gold might be a little ways away for us, but what we could acquire was the Olympic berth, and we got that. Now that you're there, you have Paris 2024. Check out Alex. You have to follow his coverage because he'll cover you for everything. But because of that, Alex, I got to ask you, for us, what are the expectations now? What would be considered something, a disappointment at the Paris Olympics, where you're looking at this team and saying, I expected better, or I'm happy with how everything turned out? Like, where are the expectations now with this team, knowing that you might have a full squad, but it sounds like so will Team USA?
Yeah, the USA team dynamic and LeBron doing an Avengers return would be pretty interesting. I think the expectation, as I just said, is just that to get a medal. I think if they come home empty-handed, that's a disappointment. Now, you never know how these things turn around. Maybe Shea gets injured or Jamal Murray gets injured, and things kind of go unfortunate throughout the tournament or maybe during the NBA season. But overall, it has to be, in my mind, to at least come back with a bronze medal, a silver medal, hopefully a gold medal. That's the expectation for this team. I know internally, talking to them at the World Cup, they always talked about winning the gold medal. Obviously, they came back with a bronze medal, but I think going into the Olympics, their goal is to win the gold medal, and I don't think that should be something where we think, oh, they're just being outlandish or hyperbolic. That's not real. This team is so talented, and now that they have a bit more continuity, and they have a guy like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander who on any court at any time, arguably the best player on the court, right? Even if the Canadians play the Americans or Serbia, he's in that upper echelon of players in the NBA. And I think this year maybe he could be in that MVP mix, depending on how the Thunder do. So overall, this team is going to be in a great position to do really well at the Olympics, and hopefully they come back with some silverware. And if they don't, then yeah, I think Canada and Canadian basketball fans should see that as a disappointment.
Well, I have to clear the air just because I know the team probably wants to win the gold medal and go home with the best prize. But you being the expert here, I'm like, what are your expectations? But it's good to hear for everyone who's watching this that as someone who's covering this team, you understand that they're so good that the expectation to get the gold is very much within reach. Regardless, as you said, even if LeBron brings the Avengers and he wants to have one last go at the Olympics. But that's great to hear. And now that I have you here, there's no way we can't talk about the NBA and the Raptors. And very recently, you had Brian Windhorst on the podcast. Congratulations on that. Everyone, check
Thank
that
you.
out. Pause this right now. Listen to that full episode. It was amazing. Super enlightening. He went into just his own career. He gave advice, but also obviously mentioned the Raptors as well as the NBA. And while you had him there, I saw that you guys spoke on the Damian Lillard front, who has currently just taken the NBA by hold. And there's a bunch of teams that are currently apparently in the race. Now, I don't know what's, the smoke show was actually intentionally wanting to get Damian Lillard on, but that's where you come in, Alex. Where is the wind blowing when it comes to Damian Lillard and his future team or his current team?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an insider, so I'll defer to what Brian Windhorst kind of told
Yeah.
me, and that's really that. It sounds as though it's going to be by training camp. We're coming. It's not too far away, so I think from the sounds of what Windhorst said was just that probably some sort of resolution by the time training camp happens. Maybe they play it out throughout the year, and that's what Windhorst said to me was that Damian Lillard isn't the type of guy that will try to hold out, do a Ben Simmons type maneuver. I think if they don't find a trade, then they don't find a trade, and he plays it out. One little tidbit that Brian talked about was just that how does that affect a young player like Scoot Henderson? Does that mean that he comes to camp and is like, hey, am I playing with Damian Lillard? Am I not? Could that cause something? Is that something maybe the Blazers front office thinks about? I'm not sure. I would expect. I still think Miami's probably the favorite to land him, there are some links to him to the Raptors. It didn't sound as though that were very concrete, as much as maybe Raptors fans would love that. The deal doesn't necessarily make sense in terms of salary cap wise. You'd probably have to trade a Siakam. Are you a better team? Is he happy here? So not to be a downer on Dame to Toronto rumors. I just don't know if that's something that's realistic. But I think the Damian Lillard situation probably is coming to a head, but he has a lot of years on his contract. So the Blazers, as they've told everyone in the NBA, do not need to trade him right now, and he's making a lot of money. So I don't see him sitting out and losing on his. I don't know how much he's making, but in the upper 40s, millions
Yeah.
of dollars. That's a lot of money that I think he'd play through, even if he's discontent.
Well, it sounds like he only has one team in mind. He just wants Miami, and that's it. And obviously, the Blazers are going to prioritize their squad, their development, and what works best for them. And that's probably why we're in the middle of this right now, where they haven't really heard any tempting offers that they might take the jump on. So, what are the chances that we're just going to see Dame lace up for the Blazers next month?
I would probably guess probably more likelier than not, just because it is a tough deal to maneuver with Miami, and probably makes a lot of sense for a three-way trade. So I don't know. I think it's maybe 50-50, or probably more likelier than not that he isn't traded immediately. But I don't see Damian Lillard as a Portland Trailblazer by the end of the year. I'd imagine he's traded at least by the trade deadline. So we'll see how it goes. And What's interesting, Windhorst talked about was that he developed a kinship or a relationship with Bama Adebayo at Team USA in Tokyo in 2021. So that's interesting to see maybe what new guys like Anthony Edwards, Austin Reeves, guys that were there in at the FIBA World Cup, what kind of new relationships and maybe new super teams develop from Team USA and maybe at the Olympics as well.
Yeah, well, we know there's a lot of fraternizing going on when you
Yeah.
have all these players put together. We saw that happen. I think it was the All Star game when it was Kyle and I forget who was it. I forget who was in the tunnel together, and it was like they ended up getting a team. Maybe Kyrie. I'm gonna have to put
Maybe
a video of it afterwards. I'm gonna have to
I
look
know
that up.
Kevin Durant. Yeah, Kevin Durant and Kyrie became friends with Team USA in 2016, and that led to the super team. So, or that imploded and blew up in their face. But yeah, that's one that's one time where it happened.
That sounds like the Kevin Durant and Kyrie way. Well, we can't let you go without mentioning, of course, the Toronto Raptors. They recently have, not let go of Fred, but Fred walked away. He's going to be in Houston. You brought on Grady Dick, and you also have an entirely new coaching staff, pretty much scratched from the bottom. So, Alex, you're a Raptors fan. What are your expectations going into this new season? Do you have any, or are you just here for the ride?
I'm here for the ride, and I think it's going to be a bit of a bumpy journey. Let's say I don't think this team has a lot of shooting. Dennis Schroeder won MVP at the FIBA World Cup. That's great. I still would probably rather have Fred VanVleet as my starting point guard. I think if Scotty Barnes takes a big leap, which he definitely could, then maybe this team can be, maybe not at the top of the East, but maybe outside the play-in or like the 7-8 seed. If he doesn't take a big leap, I don't feel very comfortable that this team can be better than a play-in team. Obviously, having Jakob Pertl, that's really good for a whole season compared to last year. But overall, I'm not super optimistic. I think the bookies have them at 36 and a half wins is kind of the over-under. I'd probably bet around that it's maybe I wouldn't pick one or the other because that feels pretty close to where I see this team is not great, but not terrible. So we'll see. I'm all for the Grady Dick vibes and Scotty Barnes vibes. If they became like best friends, I think Raptors Twitter would melt down. So I'm hoping for that. So we'll see kind of what plays out. But there's also, as I talked to Windhorst, uh, the situation with Siakam. He's waiting out, presumably to play this year out, so that he can get a supermax contract, make All NBA, thus eligible. I don't know if the Raptors can pay that or will pay that. So that's an interesting thing to see as well with OG Anunoby. He's has a player option at the end of the
Mhm.
year. What happens with that? He's been rumored wanting out of Toronto for about 2-3 years now. So I don't feel optimistic. I don't really understand what Masai and Bobby Webster have been doing the past couple of years. They brought a championship. That's awesome. But really, since they've let a lot of guys walk out the door, as Brian said on my podcast. So um, let's see what they do. I do believe that patience can be ineffective action at certain points, and that's really what it feels like with this front office. So
Mhm.
for me, it's make a decision on OG. Do you sign him or do you trade him? Don't make him walk. I just don't want Siak and OG to be walking as free agents next year. That would just be I think I'd fall over my chair and stop being a Raptors fan or something. It'd just be like, not again. So hopefully that doesn't happen. So those are some of the storylines that I'm really looking forward to. Is does Grady Dick bring the vibes, and then what happens with OG and Siakam?
Yeah, it's very interesting you mentioned Siakam and OG's contracts coming up because, as you said, if they let them walk for nothing, that's pretty much your entire core since 2020, kind of leaving for nothing in return. And what you gave up a first round pick to get Jakob Pertl, who was going to be a free agent anyway in a couple months. But I'm sure we can go on and on and on about what Messiah and Bobby have done. But you had Windy on the podcast. I want to know, did he say anything about what the league's, I guess, narrative has been around Messiah and Bobby now? Has the discussion changed about, once Messiah was looked at the greatest GM in the league, and the last couple of years have kind of maybe tainted a little bit of that. So has that changed around the league as well? What did Windy have to say about that?
Well, he talked about just how they haven't, as I said, haven't really done a lot of moves and let guys go for free. He also talked about how the past 3 years the Raptors are have done the least amount of transactions out of any other team in the league. So it really seems as though, obviously, we talked about the championship. That was, the best. Like, he was amazing. He pulled all the right strings, did all the right things, but he really feels as though they've been kind of stuck in the middle and haven't really made decisions that they really have to, and they've been very patient, which is, we always know that about Raptors, the front office. But at the end of the day, because they have let guys like, I really won't blame Kawhi walking, that they won a championship, but
That's a
Kyle
win.
Lowry, maybe they could have gotten, yeah, maybe they could have got more for Kyle Lowry, although Precious Achua is much better than Taylor Horton Tucker. You look at Fred VanVleet leaving for free, Gasol, Ibaka, those guys that they probably could have got some return, and you see that in why this team last year had no depth, was they didn't recoup assets, they didn't get players back, they just lost talent out the door, and that affects the team. And that's why this team, in a lot of ways, if they had more depth, might be at the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference, and now we feel like, well, are they going to be a play-in team or what? So that's really what Windhorst talked about, and hopefully, I'm praying that Scotty Barnes becomes like the next, I don't know, Magic Johnson or something. I don't know if that's going to happen, but at the end of the day, if Siakam's great, if OG takes a step, if Scotty Barnes takes a huge step, this team can be really pretty good. But that's a lot of ifs, and not as much that kind of certainty with how this team's going to be this year.
Right. So you're saying don't look for the shots, look for the vibes in this team. That's the season coming up.
Yes,
Yeah, I don't blame you. Look
exactly.
for Grady Dick, look for Scotty Barnes. They'll at least make you smile, but hopefully they're
Yeah.
smiling, because last season was kind of rough for Scotty too. But thank you so much, Alex, for joining me here today. Please check out Behind the Play. You can get that everywhere you get your podcast, and check out the latest episode with Brian Windhorst. Amazing. He drops all the gems in the world. And Brian kind of has some things right on the nose, more than other people around the NBA. So he's got that going for him. And we'll catch you guys next time on Hoop Talks.